This is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Tes. I'm assuming most people will be learning this probably after Shabbos if they're doing it with this shir, as Shabbos is quite early today. Today's shir has been dedicated by some close chevra here from the shul that wanted to dedicate the shir as an incredible schos for the chevra in the shul that are working on elevating their tefillah starting Shachris earlier. B'siyata d'shemaya, the schos ha'torah should bring us all to a greater place in tefillah, closer to Hashem. Those who are learning Shirim B'tefillah together with us are starting to realize what it is to be Oymid Lefnei HaMelech during Shemana Esrei, B'siyata Dishmaya. We pick it up on the bottom of Ches Amid Beis. We're about 8 lines from the bottom. The first word of the line is Abaye. Amar Abaye, Ruvain Shavachar Sadeh L'Shimon. Ruvain sells a field to Shimon. Now, an interesting question, someone mentioned to me, why sometimes does the Gemara give names and sometimes not? It is interesting how sometimes the Gemara goes to lengths to make sure that we know who's Reuven and who's Shimon, and sometimes it's Risha and Sheni. Interesting thought. So Amar Abaye, Reuven Shemachar Sadeh LeShimon V'Achrayis. With achrayis, let's remind ourselves, what is achrayis? Achrayis means security. Achrayis means that if the eventuality happens that someone comes to Shimon and collects the field, why would someone collect the field from Shimon? Because Reuven owed them money. And they come to take for Reuven. Reuven says, I don't got nothing. So you go to Shimon. Achrayis means that Shimon has security, that Shimon now can go back to Reuven and collect his money. And lo and behold, Shimon. Reuven's Balchoi comes, and he's trying to collect from Shimon. Do you know who the following is the din? De'azel Reuven u'mishai dina b'hadei. Reuven, the original owner, is allowed to go to bat for his property. Again, because if Shimon has to pay up this Balchoi, the creditor, Shimon's going to come back to Reuven. So Reuven's allowed to say, no, I'm getting involved over here. And the one who's trying to collect cannot tell Reuven, get out of here. What are you doing here? Lav bal dvarim didiyat. Which, as we'll see more and more, lav bal dvarim didiyat is not just telling someone go fly a kite. It's a halachic taina that you could say in Bezdin, this guy does not belong. We're not listening to him. Says the Gemara, you can't say that. And Reuven has all the right in the world to come to Bezdin to plead his case. Why? Because it's of course going to directly affect him. Damar le, because Reuven could say, if you collect from Shimon, alai hadar, Shimon is going to come and take from me. So din number 1 of the day is learning that when one sells something with achrayis, aside from the fact that that means that he is going to make good in the eventuality that the buyer, Shimon, loses the field, he's going to come back to Reuven to collect. But that same reason allows Reuven to walk into court and fight his case so that it does not have to come to that. The second lashon is, even if the sale was without achrayis, even if the sale was not with security, still what? Still Reuven is allowed to come and fight the case. Damar le, because Reuven could say, let's explain. If there's no achrayis, so when this guy comes to Shimon and says, I'm sorry, Reuven owed me money, I'm coming to collect your field, Shimon he loses his field. Could Shimon go back to Reuven? No, because you took the risk. You bought without achrayis, you bought without security. So in that scenario, maybe when this guy's coming to collect, if Reuven is coming to Bezdin to fight the cause of the land, the guy said, Reuven, what are you doing here? It's not going to have anything to do with you. He's not going to come back and collect from you because there's no achrayis. Reuven could say it's true. But I don't like that people have complaints against me. And we also see a little bit of a musar vart on the side over here, that someone just having complaints against you is real, to the extent that you can come to Bezdin and fight for the cause. V'amar Abaye, din number 2 for the day, the last line of Ches Amid Beis. Reuven Shavachar Sadeh LeShimon Sheloi Be'achrayis. And what happens as we turn over to Tasamid Aleph? V'yatza aleho asikin. And there were dissenters. As Rashi says, There were oirin. There were people coming along complaining that indeed they have rights, they have claims to this field that Reuven just sold to Shimon. So before Shimon actually makes a chazakah in the land, we'll see what that means. Shimon can say, you know what? I'm out of here. I don't want to get involved in this deal. I'm buying a property that people are already coming to complain. I want to back out. He's allowed to. But says the Gemara, my time, once he has a chazaka, why can he not back out? Because Reuven could say to him, I'm sorry, you knew about it and you accepted it. You heard there were dissenters. You still went ahead and you went through with the deal. You bought a bag of air, but that's your problem. I might feel bad, but I'm sorry. So now says the Gemara, okay, what is and when is it considered a chazaka? Says the Gemara, you know when it's a chazaka? When he threshes, Daish literally he threshes. Over here it means he just walks mitzri along the boundaries of the field. His surveying the field is that which makes a chazaka in the field. Says the Gemara, v'tafka shaloi b'achrayis. Aval b'achrayis loi. But with achrayis it's not true. And if the sale is with achrayis, says the Gemara, Shimon can always back out, even after he made a chazaka. But if he bought it with achrayis, then he's allowed to walk away from the deal. V'yigdi amri a second lashon, afilu b'achrayis nami. Damar le achvi tirfach v'ashalim lach. V'yigdi amri is the exact opposite extreme. That even if Shimon is making it with achrayis, nami, he can't back out once he made the chazaka. Why? Damar le, because Reuven can tell him, the original seller can tell him, achvi tirfach v'ashalim lach. If he collects it from you, then fine. You'll bring me the document that said he collected from you, v'ashalim lach, and I'm happy to pay you back. But to back out now, he would not be able to. Says the Gemara, Rav Huna Amar. So now Rav Huna is going to test whether we did appropriate chazara. Rav Huna goes back to Vavam and Beis. As Rashi points out, if you remember, we had a stira in Psukim. On one hand, the pasuk said Kesef Meitav Yishalem. You got on one hand it says Meitav Karma Yishalem. You got to pay from the Meitav. On the other hand, it said that you could pay Afilu Meisubin, even from the bran. So we had a stira. Which one is it? Do you have to pay from the Meitav, or do you have to pay from the? Are you allowed to pay from the Subin? So about someone who does damage. Says Rav Huna, I'll tell you the teretz, a new teretz. Rav Huna Amar, Oy Kesef, Oy Meitav. The damager has a choice. He can either pay from Kesef, or from Meitav, or from the best of his land. Eis Rav Nachman, Rav Huna asks Rav Nachman, Yoshiv says the pasuk, which we darshan the Rabbi Shaveh Kesef, Afilu Subin. What's for being marbe Shaveh Kesef? What's Shaveh Kesef? There's cash. There's something with cash value. For marbe Shaveh Kesef, says the Braisa, that means Afilu Subin, even brand. So how are you telling me? How you Rav Huna answering Oy Kesef Oy Meitav? No, you can pay with anything. Explains the Gemara, Hachavamayas Bidelasley. Says Rav Huna, you know what's going on over here? He doesn't have anything else. So that's why he can pay from Subin, says the Gemara Shkoyach. Bidelasley Pshita. What's the question? I got nothing else, so go take the garbage. That's it. If you don't take this, you're getting nothing, because I got nothing. So of course you can pay with that. Says the Gemara, you're right. You know what the Chedesh is Ma'u, the Teimar Min Alei. Maybe we tell him, this damager, Zel Tarach, Zavin, Vaisilei Kesef. You have nothing in this garbage field, okay. You go handle, you go get something respectful, and then pay up for your damages. Vaisilei Kesef. Kamash Malan Yasha, they could pay even Shaveh Kesef, you could pay with anything. So that's another way to reconcile the two brises. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rav Asi. Continues Rav Asi, and we're going to try, we've done this in the past, I sometimes forget, to highlight where a new piece of Gemara begins, as many have commented how it helps and aids Baruch Hashem, the Limud. Amar Rav Asi Kisafim. And obviously, if you're listening in audio, you have no clue what I'm talking about. What I'm explaining is that on the screen, we're highlighting in a different color when a new part of the sugya begins. Amar Ravasi ksafim harehein kikarka. Cash is like money. Says Gemara Lamay Hilchasa. Meitav Hainu Dravuna. That's what we just said. That oy kesef oy meitav. That's the same thing. So it's the same din. Ella says the Gemara. Lishnei achim shechalku. Two brothers divide an estate. One takes land, one takes cash. And a Baal Chayv comes. The Baal Chayv of whom? Of the Tati, of the father. He comes and he collects the karka from the brother that took the karka. So Reuven took karka, Shimon took kasef, and now Reuven's at his karka. Because the Baal Chayv, so that his father owned money, came and took the karka. So Reuven turns to his brother Shimon and says, listen, you got to give me half the cash, behadei, that they will split. Says the Gemara, pshita, that what? Habra v'halabra? Of course this is done. Are you going to tell me that this one's a brother and this one's not? If this one lost out, they both now split the cash and they get equally. Says the Gemara, Ikadi Amri Adarabba. Some say that which we just said is going on Rabba Le'edach Kisa. So again, as always in Ikadi Amri does, the Ikadi Amri is painting a picture of that which we just said in a slightly different nusach, a slightly different way of bringing it out. Sometimes the opposite. Let's see. This is why I took cash. You know why I took cash? I bidavka took cash that if it was stolen, then I wouldn't have to give you. And why did you take land? That I'm not going to pay anything back to you. Basically, the Ikad Yamri is exactly afoch. That each brother says, I took cash, you took land. Why did I take cash? Why did you take land? For the simple reason that we have enough. That if am I going to come to you? Oh, the cash went up in flames, so it's stolen. Of course not. So too, you can't come to me and say someone collected the land. Ella, says the Gemara. So I can't be where Rav Asi is saying Ksafim Harein Kikarka. Again, this is a kasha. Because according to this lashon, like Ksafim Harein Kikarka, how does it make any sense if we're saying this is dafka, the reason why one brother took that? Ella l'shnei achish shel chalku b'bal chayiv v'notal chalkoi shalechan mehen. Rather, what are we talking about? Two brothers that divide an estate, and a Baal Chayv takes one of their chalakim. In that case, says Rav Asi, Kisafim Harein Kikarka, meaning that he goes back to his other brother and he switches it up. Not in the case in which one took karka, one took money, but in a regular case, then they could go back and redivide that which was taken. I asked the Gemara of Amr Ravasi Chada Zimna. Ravasi one time said, "Deitmar ha'achim shechalku above al chayv and not al chalku shalachem mehem." Brothers divided, and then someone came and took the state of one of them. Rav Amar says, "Rav batalta machlaik," as the division is null and void. Shmuel Amar viter says Shmuel, they lost out. For Ravasi, a third opinion weighs in and Amar, and he says, "Not al ravia karka." He takes compensation in 1/4 in karka and 1/4 in money. So says the Gemara, what is this three-way machlokes between Rav, Shmuel, and Rav Asi? Rav Amar, Rav is explaining that what? Batal to machlokes, the original division is null, 10 lines to the bottom. First word line is machlokes kosavar. What does Rav hold? These are concepts, of course, that we've seen already. Says Rav that when brothers divide, says Rav, Yarshim, they're considered like Yarshim, and therefore they're responsible for each other. And that's the reason why Rav is saying over here they're going to split it up. But Talto Machloikes, the division is null, and do it again. Shmuel Amar, no. Viter, why? Because they're like purchasers. You bought it without security. Now I feel bad. You lost it. You can't come back. Viter, you lost that which was collected. For Rav Asi, in the third opinion, Amar, Ravia Bekarka, Ravia B'mais. Where does this come from? Classical pshara, says the Gemara. Mesaf kalei Rav Asi is not sure. He cares dami kilchus dami helkach because he's unsure. Noitel, 4 lines from the bottom. Ravia bakarka uravia be ma'ois. Says the Gemara. Ela mai harehem kekarka. So now let's go back. So what did Rav Asi mean when he said ksav harehem kekarka le'inyan meitav? With regard to paying from the best, Iachi hainu derav huna. So after a long and lengthy discussion, we're really doing a full 360. We're coming out that this din of Rav Asi is not teaching any form of new chiddush, but rather Rav Asi is coming along and Rav Asi is bolstering the opinion of Rav Huna. We can continue 2 lines from the bottom of Tesam and Aleph. Amar Rav Zira, Amar Rav Huna. B'mitzvah ad shlish. When it comes to a mitzvah, you spend up until a third. Says the Gemara, my shlish. What do you mean up until a third? What are you talking about? This is like randomly dropped in from nowhere, says the Gemara. So we turn over to Testament Beis, and the Gemara continues, and the Gemara explains, Ilema, if you're going to tell me that what shlish. 1 second, I apologize, you can't see the Gemara yet. Ilema, if you're going to tell me shlish beisai, if you're going to tell me that you have to spend up to a third of the estate of that which you have for a mitzvah, look at the top Rashi, you're obligated to spend up until a third of your value for a mitzvah. If that's true, says the Gemara on the top line, sounds wild. 3 mitzvahs, and that's it? Sukkah, lulav, and I don't know, you gotta buy kiddush, and all of a sudden you can have no money left? How could that be? So Elam or Rav Zira rather comes along Rav Zira, 3 lines from the top of Testament Beis, and he very famously says that what's the din of a shlish? Behider mitzvah ad shlish b'mitzvah. When it comes to a hider mitzvah, you have to spend up until a third of the mitzvah. Now qualifies the Gemara. What does it mean a third? As always, Rav Ashi shlishim el gav or l'shishim el bar is a third from the inside, a third from the outside. Simply, do you add on a third of the value, or is it after you add on, then it equals a third? Says the Gemara. Teiku b'marava amri mishrei derav zira shlish mishaloi. A third comes from he himself, and more than that comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning he'll be reimbursed. Similar, as we learned recently in Einik Shabbos, we gave a share that what Hashem pays for Shabbos, it's on Hashem, Mishal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It doesn't go on my credit card, it goes on God's. And we continue, Tes Amid Bey, 7 lines down. The new Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, a simple but a little bit cryptic statement. Kol shechayavti b'shmirasai. Anything that you're obligated to watch, hechsharti es niskoi. It's considered that you prepared the damage, meaning you're obligated. Hechsharti b'mixas niskoi. Let's say you prepared half the damage. Chavti b'tashlumei niskoi kach shekol niskoi. It's considered as if you did the whole thing, and you have to pay for all. What that means, we'll see in the Gemara. Nechasim she'in behem me'ila, non-holy properties, nechasim she'in shel b'nei bris, owned by Yidin, nechasim ha'miyuchadim u'b'chol makayim, chutz mirshos ha'miyuchades l'mazik urinizik, except for a place, mirshos ha'miyuchades l'mazik, except if he damages in the mazik's rishos, or rishos ha'nizik v'ha'mazik, a place where they have joint rishos. When you damage, you have to pay from the best. So part A of the Mishnah is dealing with some level of obligation in Shmirah. Part B is dealing with how you pay. So says the Gemara, let's take it step by step. The first statement of the Mishnah, it's considered that you prepared the damage. Says the Gemara, Kate said, what is the case of the Mishnah? Explains the Gemara. You give over an ox, you give over a pit watching ability to whom? Someone without any das, a deaf, mute, and imbecile, or a child. And that ox goes in damages. But the Brisa concludes with a cryptic line that we have to figure out. Mashain came Eish. The same thing does not deal with an Eish. That seemingly, if you give over an Eish to these people, you will not be obligated. So now we have to figure out what is the case that if I give over a shar or a bar to a child, to a deaf mute, an imbecile, I am yes chayiv. Whereas if I give over an Eish to them, I am not chayiv. And obviously everyone can anticipate the Gemara is now going to ask, whichever way you twist it, if you're obligated, you're obligated. If you're patur, you're patur. What is going on over here? Says the Gemara, just what is the case? If the ox is tied up, if the pit is covered over, and you give that over to the Chayir Sheitivakata, meaning it's not in a manner of damage right now. The Kavasa Gabi Eish, what is a similar case when it comes to Eish? Gacheles. You give over a coal is not immediately ready to damage, it's not a flaming fire. Says the Gemara, Maishnacha. What's the difference? Both cases you should be butter. You didn't give them over a proper damaging item. Ella, you know what the case must be? Bishar Mutter Bar Megula, an untied shar, a revealed and uncovered pit. The Kavasa Gabi Eish. What is the parallel by Eish? Shaleves, you give them over a torch. Mashenki Eish the butter. You're going to tell me you give a torch to a child and the child goes and he damages, you're going to be butter. Reish Lakish says, Mishmei de Chizkiah, La Yishanu, Elo Shemasar La Gacheles Veliba. When are you butter, says Reish Lakish Mishmei Chizkiah? If you give the child the Cherish the Shaita, a coal, and the child fans the flame and then he damages the sender, the adult is butter. But says Reish Lakish, Avol shal heves, if you give over a flaming torch, chayiv, then what? Then you're obligated. So says, why? My time of the bar is you're giving over a proper damager. So what is the case? That I give over an ox and a pit to a child, a deaf, mute, and imbecile, and I'm obligated. I give over the same item in the same people of Aish. Aish, we know what that means, abater. And with this we conclude, says the Gemara, La'ilam, Bishar kasher bar mechosa. The ox is tied up, the pit is covered, meaning they're not ready to damage. Udikavasa, what is the parallel? Gabayesh is is a gacheles, is a kol. Udka so you ask, Maishta why in the case of the shar are you chayiv? Why in the case of the ish are you pater? Says the Gemara, you know why? I'll tell you why. Shar darkal in a 2K, bar darkal in a 2A. What is the way if you leave the shar in its current manner? It's tied, but the derech is in a 2K. Derech is to get untied. It's true, the bar is covered, but the derech is to become uncovered. And that's why you're obligated if you give it over to a child. Whereas gacheles is not true. Kama de shavik, if you leave it ma'amei, ame va'azla, it slowly dies down and goes out. And that's why by the Eish, in the form of a call, you are pater. Concludes the Gemara, Rav Yechanan da'amar afilu masalei shalheves nami pater. Rav Yechanan holds even the case of a shalheves, a proper flame, you're pater. T'kavasacha b'shar mutter bar megula, what would the parallel be? An untied ox, a revealed bar, maishna. Why in the case of the shar and the bar, you chayiv, in the case of the Eish, you're pater, according to Rav Yechanan? Says the Gemara, hachsam savsa d'cheirish kagaram. According to Rav Yechanan, when the case of the shar, it's the savsa, it's the handling, it's the control of you that caused it, and therefore you're chayiv. Whereas when it comes to the eish, even though it's a shalheves, incorrect, exact opposite. When it comes to the eish, again, the opposite. When it comes to the shar and the bar, they do damage on their own, and therefore I'm chayiv. When it comes to the ish, it does not do damage on their own. It's true that it's very close to damage, it's bari, but there's still the involvement of the child, therefore I am pater. We'll pick it up from here, b'siyata d'shmaya, in the next shir.